First of all, Kurt, it's people like you and the media that helped this country from slipping into that dark abyss that was threatening at 2 years and the ensuing months that followed. And while we think that we should be turning a new leaf and opening a new chapter insofar as putting those events behind us, it is important that we stop to remember, even though we may not want to remember. And like I said, with the advent of technology, etc., the memorialization of these events becomes so much easier. It's so much easier for you to now come, pull up videos, etc., and say, 2 years ago. Sometimes it feels as though it was yesterday, but at other times, with all that has been transpiring in that period, it feels as though it was much, much longer. Sometimes you can't remember if it was 2 years ago or 2 months ago or a year ago. Like it just slips. And of course, the prevailing COVID pandemic does not really help in that regard. That being said, like you, like the rest of this nation and perhaps the world, we would all have liked to see changes at Gecom in a tangible way. But when we look at changes and we discuss under this big rubric of changes, what exactly are we looking for? I have long said, and I said it repeatedly during that saga, and even thereafter, I believe that that series of events was occasioned by a lack of integrity. Because persons who were charged with the responsibility of carrying out certain statutory and constitutional functions failed miserably and are neglected deliberately to do and carry out those functions, which resulted in what occurred. No amount of changes in personnel, I believe, could result or could yield the results or could produce that utopia that we all dream of without that very important aspect of integrity and impeccable integrity of that being present. So as we trot on, the transgressors, some may want me to use the word alleged transgressors because there are matters pending before the courts, but no one can take away from me what I saw, experienced, and or witnessed occurring with my very eyes. I saw all of, and I'm trying deliberately not to use the word shenanigans, but I saw it playing out. And I'll be hard pressed not to acknowledge and to say that these things did not occur. So those persons, in terms of the Chief Elections Officer and the Deputy Chief Elections Officer, are no longer with the organization. There has been, and thankfully Gecom operates, almost everything that is done at Gecom is public. So there has been a change in the Chief Elections Officer, a new person appointed through the competitive employment process. There are several other offices that are being advertised. In fact, one is currently being re-advertised. There's discussions about filling those other offices. We conducted interviews recently for the legal officer, etc. So we expect to see new faces, but like I said, any new face, one single, outside of their competencies in their areas, etc., one single characteristic that is necessary for Gecom to function and function effectively would be for them to display impeccable integrity, even in times of difficult decision making.
I'll come back to people in a few, but I want to put this issue on the table. There are some concerns that Gecom has been slow to do what it needs to do. Is that justified, and why?
I would not say it is unjustified, but it's not a term that I will embrace readily.
Right.
However, that will be tantamount, me not accepting that would be tantamount to burying my head in the sand, the proverbial sand. The reason is that I believe that all of the 5 months that we suffered through as a nation, as a people, could have been avoided had certain decisions been taken in a more timely manner, in a more efficient manner, and taking into consideration all that was there. Sometimes, even though that moniker is of slow is applied, sometimes you have to lace it up and wear it and understand the reason for the sloth. That sloth, unfortunately, has continued throughout or has continued to plague us even after that 5-month saga had come to an end. Of course, with the declaration from Gecom and the swearing of a new president and government. However, everything seems to be taking longer than usual. The country has been witnessing the painstaking process that it took to terminate the services of the CEO and DCO in light of the blatant acts that I just spoke about. That lethargy and slothfulness has pervaded the recruitment process. And today, as we speak, that lethargy and slothfulness pervades the commencement of activities that are likely to lead up to local government elections. In that regard, I am speaking about the readiness of a voters list. You'd recall that the last list that was certified by the Guyana Elections Commission was done in preparation for the conduct of the 2020 general and regional elections. We've, for obvious reasons, a second list could not have been prepared in 2020. But 2020 has come and gone, 2021 has come and gone, and we're just wrapping up, if I can use March as the precursor for therefore, the first quarter of 2022. And we're nowhere closer to commencing a process for producing a new list. In that regard, the moniker of slothfulness obviously has to be embraced, but it is not something that I see. Because of individual and collective attitudes in some regards, I don't see that changing in any real way anytime fast.
Gecom has done what it needed to do to sort of clean up the hierarchy of the Secretariat. But from your last two answers, I hear you hinting that there are still persons in the system frustrating the process. I want to ask directly whether you felt like there were still persons who were compromised during that period, still working at Gecom now, and where are they?
Well, Kurt, several of the persons who are actually before the courts are still employed by Gecom. I know that's a pressing concern for you because it is something that you have been asking yourself, as have many of your colleagues been asked, as many of your colleagues have been asking in the media fraternity. Indeed, several of those persons are still employed at Gecom, and I dare say that no steps have been taken to even have those persons on administrative leave. But let me hasten to add, even though in light of the glaring actions of the CEO and DCO and returning officer Mingo, that this world saw, I don't want to limit it to what I saw, I don't want to limit it to what you saw, but what this world saw, thanks to coverage provided by the likes of your media house, even in light of those glaring actions, this world also saw the resistance to the removal from Gecom. And I think that paints a necessary picture, and the requisite inferences can be drawn from there for our populace to understand why these difficulties are there. There is a resistance to anything that is good at Gecom.
You talk about painting the picture. At the level of the commission itself, could you help to paint the picture of what it is like in terms of helping Gecom to really strengthen the institution, the electoral body?
Sometimes I think that there is no impetus, collective impetus or desire by the commission so to do. It is no secret that the commission is now a fractured body. And I say that without fear of successful contradiction. At the time that I went to that commission, you could have been assured of meaningful discussion and agreement on many issues, Unfortunately, you can't even, I dare say, have meaningful discussions at all, much less agreement. And sometimes I sit and I wonder about the future of the commission, right? The future of the commission in light of these postures that are adopted in that body.
I want to ask you, because one of the public cries coming out of 2020 was for changes to be made at the commission level, particularly as it relates to how commissioners are appointed. Asking for sort of a removal of the political process. Is that something you would support? Would that be a fix then, rather, I should ask?
I want to.
The issues being faced.
This is a question that I face all the time.
Right.
And as I've said publicly before, there are two ways that I can answer this. And it all depends on my mood. I can easily say to you that that is above my pay grade. That is not a decision that I have to make.
Right.
And as a consequence, I will not offer a comment on it.
You'd be right to say that.
However, I can also say, and in any event, I think I'm entitled to so saying, because of course I'm a part of the commission. I will not say that the appointment process is political.
Right.
And I know the standards to which I hold myself. And I know the positions that I take within the organization are always positions that are based in principle and are based on law. I unfortunately cannot say that across the board. That being said, I believe, and this is me being very personal in my opinion here, I believe that it would be very difficult to find all these lovely utopianly described persons about members of civil society, independent persons, all of that. At least the current composition, you see where people wear or have worn badges on their sleeves in the past. You know what you see is what you get. You don't want closeted politicians masquerading in a commission to do the very same thing that is currently being complained about. And as I challenged another interviewer sometime not so long ago, if you can identify to me 6 or 7 persons who fit that bill, in fact, I had even lowered that threshold to ask for them to provide to me 2 persons who can fit that bill. I, of course, will not place that burden on you here and now, but I have uttered it for your contemplation, the difficulty that will attend such an appointment. And look at it. Even in other commissions that are necessary to be formulated, as soon as someone is identified, fingers start pointing at that person. or persons. So I don't see any great value in the change of the personnel or the composition per se, although I must confess it has been something that lots of the electoral observers, etc., have been speaking about for many, many elections past. What it requires, Kurt, is the very thing that I'm speaking about in relation to the personnel in the Secretariat. You have to have a desire to see a proper functioning organization. And when you have persons who are on a commission, who sat silently when these things were happening in 2020, how can you expect anything better?
On a more personal note, do you still have unanswered questions? Do you still wonder why something happened the way it did, why a certain Gecom individual did something a certain way? Do you have those lingering questions still?
Honestly, Kurt, I battled with those questions for a long time. I choose not to dwell on it. I choose not to dwell on it because, like I said, I prefer to see Gecom moving forward in fulfilling its mandate. And Gecom doesn't have a very elaborate mandate, you know. Gecom's mandate is twofold. One, register the citizens, and two, hold elections. At this point, it seems as though we are getting difficulty in doing both of those. And I believe it comes respectfully from a mindset of the key players, right? And it makes it very difficult to achieve anything meaningfully.
Somebody also said to me earlier today that they still have nightmares. Is that your experience?
Kurt, it is very fortuitous that you have mentioned that. Mm-hmm. No, I don't have nightmares. Right. I may have post-traumatic stress disorder as a consequence of the events. Mm-hmm. But yesterday, out of sheer humor, I posted your most infamous newsroom theme. Right. And the reactions from people to that, I think tell a particular story. Because 2 years later, the mere sound of that theme, the last comment I got on it, I believe earlier this morning, said Guyana's horror movie theme, right? The events of 2020 will be permanently etched into the minds of Guyanese and people further afield. It is not something that is easily forgettable. And for those of us who were literally in the belly of the beast, seeing persons from whom you expected better operating in a subpar manner, it really causes you to question your belief in your fellow humans and in humanity generally, right? But it is what it is. That is done. There's a country to be built. A fundamental pillar of democracy is regularly held elections in a fair, free, and transparent manner. And that is what my mandate continues to be on the commission, regardless of what the others with whom I sit, regardless of what their mandate is.